To everybody that's joining us from all over the continent. I hope everybody's well, everybody's keeping safe, and everybody is keeping warm during this very cold winter here in Johannesburg. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. I know you could be anywhere else, but you chose to be with us. And just as an introduction, my name is Nozugo Nkumanda Punzi. I am the Associate Director at Advisory Culture, which is a boutique firm focusing on culture transformation, change management, and organizational transformation and improvement. So I have got really a great panel with me today to talk about this very important topic. And I will give everybody an opportunity to just introduce themselves, who they are, what work they do, and what they're most looking forward to today. So I am going to start with the person I can see on my screen first, which is Susanna. We can't hear you, Susanna.
Sorry. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. My name is Susanna. I'm Angolan and living in Angola as well. I've got about 20 years experience in human resources in different senior positions in different multinationals, with the main focus most recently on talent management. And 2 years ago, I decided to start then full-time my own business, Crescer Consultoria, which is a company that does people development, mainly coaching and soft skills training, behavioral training for companies and individuals. Okay, so very happy to be here. I think this is a very hot topic, succession planning in Africa. Yeah, very excited to be here with the great colleagues here in the market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanna. Jacqueline.
Good morning. I'm Jacqueline Wanyama. I'm the Group Head of Human Resources for the SAFL Group. At SAFL Group, we pride ourselves in being Africa's largest building solutions provider. We are headquartered in Kenya and have operations in 10 countries in East and Southern Africa. So I have the privilege of working with close to 3,000 phenomenal people and trying to change the building landscape to give people, quality, affordable homes. Within this space, I'm responsible for people development, culture, transformation. So this topic of succession planning resonates very closely with me. It's something that we all know we need to do really well, but it's really hard to do. So I'm looking forward to sharing with my colleagues on this panel and hearing from them on what we can do better and differently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Nyokabi?
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just reflecting back on my career over 20 years, spanning print and TV media, banking, professional services, and back into banking again, and looking at that journey and seeing extent to which succession planning and overall impact of people leadership has had on the growth of the organizations I've worked with. It gives me joy to share that experience and contrast what I've seen work, what I think could work better. Get insights from colleagues in the room and from the participants in the house. My name is Nyokabi. I'm the Managing Director for Standard Chartered Bank in West Africa. I'm taking this from Nigeria.
Great, thank you so much. And now for our Rose Amongst the Thorns, Dr. Jerry Gule.
No, it's the other way around, right? Yeah, no, I'm so privileged to be the only thorn here today. This tends to happen all the time. But anyway, my name is Dr. Jerry Gule, and I work for myself currently. I'm an executive coach under the banner of Gule Executive Coaching, PTY Ltd. I've been in the human resources development space, people management for, I think it's over 35 years now. It's a professional life background, teacher by profession, ended up teaching at the university, then decided enough is enough and branched into the private sector, training manager, personnel manager, way that I'm not giving my age way back then. And then human resources manager at development programs, worked for different organizations, including Standard Bank, but not Standard Chartered, the other one. And yeah, so I professional services, PwC, Total Energies now, and then the Institute of People Management most recently. But I started my own organization, to which I'm back now operating from. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panel for just sharing a little bit about who they are, where they're from, and what they do. So without taking up or wasting any more time, I want to get straight into the topic. But how I'd like to approach this is to step a little bit away from the typical I know this is going to be focused a lot on HR, personnel, management, as what we used to call it back in the day. But I just want to use an example or speak to a case study that I found very interesting, and I think links very well to the topic of success planning. So there is a study of the story of Japan. So Japan has a national development plan called Vision 2025, which was launched in 2010. And the plan outlines the country's economic, social, and environmental goals for 2025. And it's been carried out by all incoming presidents since then. And the country has been very faithful to it. And so each president that has come in, whichever party or affiliated, belief system that they might have, they have remained faithful to this one version, which included achieving goals like sustainable economic growth, reducing poverty by half, improving quality of life for all citizens, creating a more sustainable environment. And it's actually been quite successful, right? Because it's reduced poverty and improved quality of life. So let's say the poverty rate in 2020 was around 15.7%, but by 2020, that had been reduced by 10.7 to 10.7. So there's something that they're doing right. And from what I've just shared a little bit about Japan, what parallels, and maybe let me start with you, Nyokabi, what parallels can you draw from the journey versus the journey of a company in terms of making its way through growth and achieving success?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That case study gave me a chance to actually dig deeper to get to understand what Japan has done right. And it's quite fascinating to see how they've achieved that consistent economic growth in very turbulent times. Two quick parallels come to mind. One, ability for long-range planning. They saw 25 years into the future. And organizations that are looking to build their capability and grow into perpetuity will usually have a much longer range view and then broken down to shorter term objectives. Mm-hmm. The second bit that stood out for me is the ability to adapt that strategy that they have to changing circumstances, whether it is tailwinds, riding on tailwinds when the economy grew. And I remember from the research I did in 2014, they had one of the highest economic growth in the 20 years that they've had the strategy, or managing the headwinds, whether it's COVID, changes, changes in macroeconomic circumstances. And you can see how they then adapted AI and reinforced what you've talked about around sustainable clean energy, sustainable energy, to respond to some of the criticism that has continued to come around green energy. So the ability for the country and the ability for organizations to flex and adapt their strategy to changing circumstances is quite another parallel I see. Thank you.
Great. Would anybody else like to add to that in terms of the parallels they can draw from that example?
Yes, if I may. I think the other one that I saw that all of brought really to my attention was the leadership follow through. So the leaders followed that same long-term vision they had for the country. No one got there and said, I'm starting my own. And that is why I saw that there was this progression. That's why they could really develop so successfully, in my view. And that goes going back to companies. when companies really have a vision, that is one of the reasons I think visions are so important. I mean, even if they are dreamers, but at least it gives a direction. And each leader, when they come, they know where they're going, and they just continue from the previous. And I think that caught my attention as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Susanna. Jacqueline.
Yeah, I think on the same point that Susanna has pointed out, one of the things that I thought was really powerful and can resonate with organizations as well was the ability to demonstrate progress against the plan. So they had a plan, they were working the plan, but you could see that they were demonstrating positive progress against it, which is really good in terms of, and really powerful for getting buy-in and continuity onto the overall plan.
Great. So I really love the points that have been shared, especially around that longevity of thinking, taking that leap of faith and saying, this is what we see, where we'd like to be in the far future, but also having the flexibility to adjust to current environments. And maybe let me come to you, Dr. Jerry, around now if we are like have been drawing these parallels to what organizations can do in terms of having a long-term vision, but also remaining flexible. What elements of this journey do you think align with the principles of succession planning?
Yeah. So what I mean, this is a beautiful case study, and it shows a couple of things. One, there is unity on who are we. I mean, the Japanese, so they decided this is who we are, and this is what we would like to be. And there is buying into that vision. So I think that's critical, and that's also critical in companies if they are going to be in it for the long haul. The ability to pass the baton to the next batch of leaders, but the same vision, tweak it, yes, but be in a position to pass it on. Because there is this understanding, this is who we are. So the culture that we create as an organization, in this case as a country, and the ability, I mean, listen, we are talking, in the case of Japan, we are talking about political parties, right? And you can just imagine that here political parties with different, you can call it different approaches to these things, but the vision for the nation is one, right? So buying into that vision. And I think even in companies, if you're going to succeed, it is because you all agree. You may differ on a number of things, but you all agree on the vision. Where are we trying to get at? And if that is agreed, that is the standing guiding principle. So whoever comes into this organization, as long as the vision works, everybody's going to say it is benefiting us. This is what we're going to do to make sure that we maintain that, because it creates success for us as an organization. I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question there.
Yes, you are. And you actually touched on a very good point when it comes to passing on the baton. I don't know how many people actually watch the Olympics and the relay races. How well the person before you passes on the baton usually is the indicator of how well you're going to run the portion of your race. And I think that becomes very important around succession planning, right? So it's about understanding the vision, being faithful to the vision while you are leading the vision during your tenure, but also being able to on well to the next person without having detracted from what was being tried to be achieved. And I think maybe in playing on that theme of passing on the baton and passing it on well, in your respective sectors, would you say that talent is being groomed for the future, right? Like for the management positions, are they being successfully equipped to deal with issues of tomorrow, even if the issues are not yet apparent? And maybe let me give this question to Jacqueline, because I think construction or anything related to that is actually a very evolving, very big, very interesting sector.
Okay. So picking up from what Dr. Jerry spoke about, the importance of having a clearly articulated vision and having everyone buy into that vision and be able to use it to mold the actions that follow. I think that's a very key lesson from the Japanese example, because that clarity of vision then helps us, and within the organization, that's what we've tried to do, to understand what are those behaviors that will help us to succeed tomorrow. Because we all know that where we are today or what we have today may not necessarily be the skills or the success factors of tomorrow. So as an organization, what we've tried to do is to have a clearly articulated vision and to break that vision down into actionable milestones and to regularly report on progress against those milestones. Now, from a succession planning point of view, what that helps us with is to define then what would be the factors of success for leaders of tomorrow. So who are those leaders that will be able to carry through this vision from a skills, competence, and most importantly, behavioral point of view? Because I think that's something that's really emboldened in this story of Japan. By having that clarity of vision, they are able to consistently identify the leaders who will carry forward that vision and then develop those leaders over time. So like Nyokabi, I went and dug in a bit into Japan and what's working for them. And what I found was that the succession processes they have their frictions, but are relatively seamless because the vision is clear and all people are focusing on is who is the individual that will best articulate and carry forward this vision, which I think is really powerful for us as an organization and what we choose to do today. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe to specifically your sector and Safal. So what is it? Do you feel like you as an organization are actually taking these lessons on board? And how do we see it in your guys' work to build up the talent pipeline for the future?
Okay, so within the SAFL group, we have taken very deliberate steps to assure ourselves of the leaders of tomorrow. So the group is just under 65 years old. I think we're 63 years old this year. And what we have seen work for us over time is developing leaders who will take on from the current leaders over time. So we started off as a family-run business, a family with a very clear vision and focus of what it wanted. And through the course of, I would say, the last 58 years, most of the businesses or the overall business was led by the founding family members. Somewhere about 10 years ago, that family decided that, hey, we cannot continue to succeed ourselves. We need to bring in experts into the organization so that we can grow and assure ourselves of another 60 years. So what we have done is to define who we are as an organization, what is our vision, what are our values, and how will we go about achieving that. Alongside that, then we have developed a very comprehensive people management plan and strategy. And within that is a huge element of talent management where succession planning is anchored. One of the things that we found when we started the process was how weak we were in terms of competencies for the future. We had really strong competencies for the way the business is structured today and the things that we needed to do today. But as we were transforming from a predominantly roofing company into a building solutions company, we found that we did not have those requisite skills to take us there. So we've gone through a process of, first of all, identifying what are those product solutions that we want to deploy into the market. How does that then translate to the skills and competencies that we'll need in the organization? We've had a very deliberate process of identifying who our key talent will be, assessing them to confirm their potential and ability to perform to organizational expectations, and then assigning very deliberate development actions to them, both formal and informal, on the job continuous, because we believe that that's the only only way we will start to truly develop successors internally. The past 3 years have shown us that when we had very critical roles at senior leadership level, based on the new vision that we had, we didn't have those competencies internally. So we went to the market and bought the competencies. But we're sure that that is not a long-term sustainable plan. And we're very deliberate now about building those leaders from within the organization. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. And you have made some really, really good points and shared some very important steps in your journey, especially around sometimes the tendency is to want to go by the competency. But when you buy the competency, those people have not been around long enough to truly understand where the business has come from, and where the business dreams to be, right? And I think is still in that vein around what is being done in terms of succession planning in your various organizations. You're guiding about financial services, and financial services is always evolving. The competition you have, right, has, and a lot of it has not been apparent in the past, right? We thought banks would be banks until all of a sudden you had cell phone companies being banks. You've had shops offering credit solutions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always evolving, always changing. Tech is a huge thing. And so in that respect of how quickly things are evolving, what is Standard Charter's approach to succession planning?
Thank you so much. I smile when you say that, because these days you'll even see what we call virtual banks coming in and attracting the broad spectrum of generation that are looking to experiment with new technology. So when we talk about the future and say what's going to happen in future, I smile because I think the future is already here. You know, whether it's future skills, whether it's the disruptive, positively disruptive, of course, trends we are seeing in technology. Who knew what generative AI, such as ChatGPT, would do to our world? So the bank has continued to look at all of those real shifts in the industry we work in and in the world, and what to develop certain mindsets, because we realize the skills are changing so quickly. So we're looking to develop a certain mindset in our people that will enable them thrive in the future. And I'll talk about 3 of those mindsets. The first one is a learning mindset, ability to one and learn what we knew, because often what got us here is not what's going to get us to the next point. And the ability to relearn and upskill oneself depending on the capabilities that they need. So learning mindset is one. The second one is resilience, building resilience, so that leaders and teams are able to not just survive, but thrive in a changing, anticipate the change and thrive in a changing environment. The third one we are looking for strongly is a human-centered leadership. With everything that's going on in the world today, wellness, empathy, transparency, credibility around a leader makes all the difference. So against those broad mindsets, then we come into the skills of the future. And a couple of years back, we did a survey, looked at all the roles in the bank and where the world future looks like. And we classified some skills into sunset skills, capabilities that may not be needed 2, 3, 4 years from now, and sunrise skills, capabilities that are going to be needed in the future, and have worked consistently. We then set up future learning skills academies that enabled colleagues to continually upskill themselves and reskill themselves towards the future skills that are required, towards the sunrise skills. And how that then plays into succession planning is that we are always grooming and growing our talent. We identify talent very early. When they come in, we have early careers talent, we have mid careers and senior leadership. And we have solid succession plans, again, built on both internal and external talent, with the internal talent being over 70%, thanks to our wide footprint or in over 60 countries across the globe. And we are always testing that succession plan beyond the growth experiences that Jacqueline talked about. We are always testing to see how live it is, how practical is it, extent to which it's working. And one of the ways we test is when new opportunities come, we then review over time how many of these successors have been able to take up the new opportunities. What's the conversion rate? And the second bit is the extent to which we are able to retain key successors and key talent within the bank. So quite interesting. And looking back, I can say over 70–80% of our senior roles have actually been filled through the succession plan, which lends credibility to it and says to colleagues across the bank that indeed they can grow to senior roles if they aspire.
Wow, that's incredible. And you've mentioned two broad topics that I think are very key to call out. This very last portion, which is about you cannot track what you do not measure. So you might talk the talk around maybe Standard Chartered being very deliberate about succession planning, but if you are not actively measuring the impact of your interventions and how that has translated to real life succession planning, like you've mentioned, 70–80% of your senior roles have now been filled through this process, then sometimes people are working blind. And the other element that you have spoken about was around mindset shift, which is so important because behavior often dictates how people show up and how they absorb the shifting sectorial in environment. And I think this brings me to my next question, which I'm going to direct to Susanna, right? What role do you think an organization's culture plays in succession planning? And as you answer that, maybe also think through, and this is to the rest of the panel, what can be detractors and enablers of succession?
Thanks, Akul. Yeah, so in terms of culture, yes, culture plays a big role, a huge role, and particularly when we know we are in African markets where culture, when we spoke about first culture of the people in general, but also organizational culture, because if we have an organization that is very, very closed, and again, speaking here of mindset, if we have leaders, especially top leaders who are very close, then it's more difficult, I believe, to go through a real succession plan. If we have leaders who are not thinking of the future of the organization, upskilling themselves, and also in terms of the moves that we're seeing in the world, the leaders, I believe it starts all in the leaders, that this culture shift that they need to begin with and go down then to everyone in the company. And if we have leaders who are not open to growth and that are not open to develop and that are not open to all the changes that are happening, then this will be a disable effect of succession planning. And on the other side, if we look at enablers, besides the leadership, is also to embrace different generations, because we have these younger generations coming that have very specific demands, that want to be seen and to want to be trained and have the right mentors. And I think mentorship is one of the things that can enable succession planning as well. We need to mentor young people and upskill them, not just with the technical side. And I like what my colleague here said about the mindset shifting, that we need to help people with the soft side, with the soft skills, and this changing of mindset, and enable them. Because one thing that I'm seeing a lot, that's happening a lot as well that I see is that we have younger and younger people getting to top positions. So, and I think that's a good thing that we're trusting more and more younger people for that. But we need to equip them. We need to equip them if we really want to get that continuity. If we look at the case study again, for us to reach that continuity in terms of growth, we need to ensure that we train, that we mentor, that we give them opportunities, particularly the young generations, but of course without forgetting the older generations, because they have lots to give as well, to the company, to the group, and to the younger people. Okay, not sure if I answered your question.
Yes, you have. And maybe, Dr. Jerry, I would like to have you add on to that. So what is your view? So now in your realm of coaching, etc., how do you feel organizational culture could play a role in succession planning? And also, from the work that you have done, what have you seen as enablers and detractors of
Great
succession?
Great question. Up to so far, we have spoken about this topic of succession planning, and someone may think, oh, it always goes smoothly. The fact of the matter is sometimes it goes terribly wrong. There are tears, there's blood on the floor, and you just wonder, why didn't these people prepare to make sure that when the time comes for the leader to exit, that they have planned for it? Sometimes it can go extremely wrong. This is what I've seen. But one of the enablers is when the outgoing leader or the leader who was there before willingly says, listen, I'm not here forever. You guys need to actually be preparing my successor. In fact, taking the lead himself or herself to say, now we need to make sure that there's someone who's going to succeed me. These things can go horribly, horribly wrong. And it can affect the company in many ways. Listed companies in particular, the stock may just plummet in ways that are unimaginable, simply because people, there is a fight that the market sees as this succession planning thing is taking place. So an enabler is a willing leader, right? I'm happy to go and I want to influence this policy positively. There are leaders who want to cling to power. They don't want to go. I mean, the question that was put here is, why do African leaders stay so long? I don't know why, but I think part of it is greed. Yeah, they want to, is greed, is corruption. People want to hold on so that if they leave, the next people look up, maybe they die in office, so nobody is going to hold them accountable. Maybe that's why they stay so long. So a great enabler is a leader who says, I'm not here for eternity. I'm here for a time, and I would like to hand this thing over. Because you never see that your success, you don't see how successful you were with your succession planning in the first year. You would probably see in 5 years, looking back, how is my successor or the person that succeeded so and so, how far have they taken the organization forward? That's when you look back and say, this thing worked. Or you look back and say, there's no company, there's no organization. Whoever came in, destroyed the thing and it's gone. So the other thing is, there is an element, vulnerability is something that it's new speak, in the leadership space. But it's such an important factor, because what that says is that I don't know it all. Leaders who cling to power is as if they're the only ones who can run this thing. I also think that what is an enabler is reading the times properly, understanding your own, knowing yourself. And if you are fair and you are a person of integrity, you will say, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the one to lead us to the next path. We need someone different, because you are honest, you understand your skills, your competencies, and you are going to assist the organization to find the right person. What I experienced, what I found, because leadership is never an easy thing, and it's interesting when you coach leaders what you experience. Sometimes in organization where the culture is not a culture of transparency, is not what we call a culture where there is psychological safety, a person could be struggling, genuinely not being able to take the organization to the next level, but they won't say. Because how are they going to be perceived? How are they going to be treated? So it's important that organizations really create the space where we say, we know your competencies, right? But your competencies people should feel free. Listen, I need help with this. I don't understand this. Maybe you need to give me an assistant, or maybe I need to exit so someone more competent than me can come into the role. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know how to do this. But sometimes as leaders, we feel you can never say, I don't know how. It's like we know it all, which is incorrect. Thank you.
That's so true. And I love what you say about the fact that sometimes people are just afraid to say, I don't know, because they might equate it to I am no longer a good leader, which is not necessarily the same thing. And maybe on that path, Jacqueline, like a question maybe that has now popped up into my head as Dr. Jerry was speaking is, how do you create an environment of psychological safety? How do you create an environment of feeling safe, an environment of being able to ask for help? And I think that then also has to do with the culture, and maybe in the story of Safal, how do you think the family created an environment? It's okay to let go when you are no longer able to serve the future of the business.
I think that's a journey. I don't think it's a place that we have fully reached yet. It's a journey that we are on, but it's a journey that is centered around who we want to be as an organization, and clearly articulating that and walking the talk around the things that we say. So one of the things that Florence said around having a people-centered leadership is very critical to how we are operating today, saying that we are an organization. Yes, we are in the construction industry, and yes, we're a building solutions company, but we're a people-centered organization. That means that people are at the heart of what we do. And who are we as people? And making it normal for people to have conversations around where they are at today. So one of the things we do, for instance, or we've been trying to introduce, is start your meetings with checking in with people and just saying, how are you today? How are you feeling today? Because the organization's industry is sometimes confused with how people should behave. We're in the steel business, so we need people who are strong. I remember one of the mottos, the running mottos internally was, we are people of steel. So that meant that you can't be vulnerable. That meant that you couldn't speak up when things weren't going well. That meant that leaders felt that they needed to come down with an iron hand. And so we've tried to change that narrative from, we make steel, we don't have to be people of steel. We're human, right? And what does that look like? So one of the things Dr. Jerry has said that's resonated with me is allowing people to be vulnerable. It's still not a fully acceptable practice in my organization today. Sometimes it's seen as a sign of weakness, because remember, our legacy is we're people of steel, right? So if you're vulnerable, it's almost seen like, oh, you're admitting to you can't do it, you can't hack it. However, the conversations now, we're turning them around from subjective decision-making to a lot of objectivity. So if somebody comes to you, and these are competencies we're building in our managers who for 10, 15 years have known that we are people of steel and we have to be strong, to say, okay, allow, first of all, open door doesn't mean have the door open for people to walk in to be slammed. Listen to the person and understand where they're coming from and what you need to do to build them or to help them or support whatever it is that they're struggling with. Now that has come with a revamp of acceptable behaviors in the organization, values overhaul in the organization, and norms and practices of working. So I wouldn't say we're there yet. I think it's a journey we're still on, but I have seen pockets of really good progress being made and actual feedback, because now we are taking it a notch higher and tapping into actual employee focus groups and engagement surveys to understand how are these things we're talking about really resonating with people. So that's my SAFL experience on that one.
Thank you so much. That's really insightful, and you're absolutely right. It's not something that you achieve immediately, and I don't think it's ever a destination, right? Because people are always evolving, people are always changing, and there's just so much to it, that it's not something that you can say, I am now here completely. And when you say I'm now here, especially with that sort of work, it kind of means you're now stopping growing, you're stopping to evolve. Now, back to you, Nyokabi. You have mentioned a lot in how you go about building succession planning into the organization, like that very difficult conversation of saying this is sunset skills, these are potential sunrise skills, and interventions at early career, mid career, as well as senior management. So that's wonderful, but that also sounds like it's a lot of responsibility on the organization and then on the leaders as well. Maybe how I want to phrase this question rather is, what do you expect from potential successors? Or if I am in the organization, what should I be thinking about? What should I be doing if I want to be considered as a successor?
Really interesting question you asked right there, because this year we've realized that there's need to revisit our approach to identification of talent, and go completely experimental, find talent largely based on past performance. We have come to realize that past performance is not always a dictator of or an indicator of future potential, and especially given how quickly skill sets, the world is changing and shifting skill sets is happening. So we've now identified 4 core skills that are predictors of future potential. One of them being ability to learn, another being, and I will not get into that detail today, perhaps the next time. Another being ability to execute, ability to lead, and the 4th one, ability to collaborate. Okay. Taken that, identified behavioral measures that would enable us identify talent that has those skills, and then also engage the talent and ask them, what is your aspiration? How far do you want to grow? Because at times we make assumptions that people are looking for the next role. Perhaps they are not ready as yet. Perhaps there's something going on in their personal life that prevents them from taking on additional responsibilities here and now. So our talent approach going forward is very self-driven. We are democratizing talent. We believe everybody is talent, and what differentiates people going forward is ability to demonstrate and grow in those 4 skills, coupled with the desire and passion to grow. Having said that, coming to actual tangible measures to enable that journey that Jacqueline talked about, a psychological safety and ability to develop talent. First thing is we are always continually investing in leadership. And we look at categories of how a leader or a person grows themselves, how they grow others, and how they grow the enterprise. A lot of our learning is self-led. So we provide platforms where people can build on their learning journeys based on the demands of their work and their future aspirations. One of the questions I always ask leaders at interviews, when I'm interviewing, hiring, especially senior leaders, is, could you give me examples of how and who you have grown to either outgrow you or into senior roles? And because that is always an indicator of the kind of mindset one has in terms of talent holding versus talent growing and talent sharing. The other thing we've done, and this is also quite radical, is made succession conversations transparent. So if somebody is ready now or near ready, as soon as they are identified as a talent, we will speak to them and share to them that they're in the pipeline for a particular role, so that there are no doubts that they are being developed for the role, and they too know what they need to do to get there. It doesn't guarantee anybody a position, ultimately, because it's a pool we are developing. There would still be a competitive process in the selection. The value of the transparent conversation is that it builds on the leader that they are moving someday because they've committed to develop a pool of people. The other aspect we do is create potential and opportunities for leaders to move to, so that we reduce the bottleneck where somebody feels I've got to hold on to this role because I have nowhere else to go. And I guess that's where we benefit from our wide network, because then people are able to take on cross-country roles or probably move on to non-executive positions if somebody is really at the top of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I like the idea of talent mobility because I think for a long time, maybe because of just our history in Africa, we've always believed that the only way to succeed in an organization is to go up. But sometimes a lateral move in a completely different country, in a completely different role, is just as enriching as potentially moving up. And maybe to you, Susanna, as a final question, as a coach, what are some of the things do you think success need to focus on as they prepare or put up their hands to succeed somebody?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so for me, first of all, is for us to know why are we doing it. You know, why are we doing this? It needs to be clear, in my opinion, to everyone, especially top leaders. Why are we doing it? But also pass down to employees. And then the other thing is always have the big picture at hand. When we think of success, having the big picture at hand to ensure that we know where we're going with this, where we're going with the company. Those two. Also, in terms of preparing, I think mentorship is very important when you talk about succession. And I think we need to tackle on mentorship as well. And again, as has been mentioned already here, being able to let go of power. I think that's very important, letting go of power to ensure that we let other people come. But when you say let go of power, not just in a sense because I have to, because thinking when I let go of power, I also benefit. I also benefit because then I can grow somewhere else, or maybe if I'm at I'm at an age that I've reached, for example, retirement, or I need to also move careers, I can also rest, for example, do other things even on a personal level. Okay, so there may be others, but I think for now that's what I have to share.
Thank you. Yeah. So for somebody who's now leaving a position, it's important for them to. What I'm hearing you saying, it's important for them to understand what their next is. Right? Where will they go? They're now going to be able to rest. They might then take on things that they didn't have time to do before. And maybe to you, Dr. Jerry, if am buying or am getting ready to step in to the next role. I've been identified as a potential person to succeed someone. What do I need to think about?
Yeah, great question. Great question. You see, the thing with leadership, sometimes if you don't want it, don't take it, right? So the first thing is to make that decision, because the thing is not hey, leadership is not nice sometimes. The position may seem glorious and glamorous, but there are tough decisions to be made there. So you've got to want it. So that's the first thing. If you have been identified, anointed as the next one, the next one that you should be bowing to, then you've got to start walking like a leader. Yeah, if you were not doing that before. And what does walking like a leader look like? Where else you may have had your clique of friends and people that you were close to, you're now going to be leading all of us. So we've got to have access to you. That's part of your preparation. How do you present your executive presence, as it were, your leadership presence? How do you show up? That's part of the preparation. And of course, to know the business, you've got to talk to everybody, right? That's what leadership is about. And I've been very fortunate, Nozuko, in that in the last In fact, in the last 24 months, I happen to chair a couple of boards. I've seen the succession of 3 CEOs. I've been part of that process to enable the identification and the elevation of people to these particular roles. So once you have been identified, they of course you're like, it's like being, if you're an ordinary employee, you become a supervisor, things change. You've got to understand that some relationships are going to change. It's the same with this thing. It's different from leading, for instance, maybe a department to leading departments. There's an approach in which you take. If you're leading a group of companies, there's an approach that you've got to take, because it's how you relate to the people that report immediately to you, but as well as the entire organization. So you've got to develop you've got to understand yourself and ask HR to help you with those skills that you may not have developed, just the soft skills, so that you can reach out to everyone.
Sure. Now you got to walk the walk. You got to be it. You got to embody it. That's, of course, if you want it. Great. Thank you so much. I'd just like to acknowledge all the comments we've been getting. They're not going unnoticed. And I saw a really good discussion happening around the importance of culture in this journey of succession and building legacies, right? And the success of organizations. And I see a lot of agreement in terms of that. And I've also seen comments around what has been going wrong, and people feeling that in organization, there's a lack of trust from leaders, being able to trust that the next round of leaders will be able to really take on the baton and carry through the vision, or trust that the next batch of leaders will be able to do things as well as they do. But an interesting one I saw was from Sunday as well, which was that hiring of young employees to take over, he says he feels like it has not proven to work, because they usually leave before the leadership can be handed over to them. And I think that speaks to attrition and looking for roles elsewhere. I will throw this question to anybody in the panel who'd like to maybe add a comment to that, about people are not staying long enough to be successors. So let's start with that one.
May I take a stab at that?
Go ahead.
So, taking us back to the mindset shift around talent holding and talent sharing. My take and that of my organization is develop the capability anyway. Those that will stay, will stay. Those that leave, one, you've contributed to the global body of human capital development. And two, the person you then attract from the market will have been developed by another organization. So it sort of equalizes eventually, because you're hiring somebody who's been trained, and you've trained somebody else who then joins the pool of talent. And as the old saying goes, if you think education is, or learning is expensive, try ignorance. So as organizations, we mustn't let ourselves be fazed by attrition, especially if it's because the talent is moving to bigger, better roles. But if the attrition is because our culture is not able to retain key talent, then that would be a different conversation.
That's very important, right? Attrition is natural, so we cannot be afraid, and also we cannot hold people hostage to an organization, because if we feel like we have to hold on to people, they might then become the very detractors we are afraid of. Thank you for that. And then a second question, and I think this also might be something you can assist with, Nyokabi. It's around how do you do succession planning in a really, really large organization?
we
Oh,
employ what,
sorry, just finish that
86,000?
question. It's also around like what has been the journey in identifying suitable platforms to host this information so it's accessible.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So think 86,000 odd professionals across 66 markets, and the succession approach to succession has actually worked in the organization. I would shift my mind from the platform and focus more on the culture, because once the culture is in place, the platform could be an Excel worksheet, it could be an enterprise resource system that actually provides for talent and succession management like we do now. But without the mindset shift, none of the platforms would actually work. So my suggestion I saw the question to the person that asked, if we haven't, let's begin to focus on driving the right culture around making succession planning a mainstay in the organization. Beyond that, several platforms are already available in the market.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. We've got another 2 questions. So I think I want to direct them both to Jacqueline, because you actually alluded to it earlier. So one question is, how instrumental is measuring the organizational culture in identification of talent for the purpose of succession planning? And I think you had mentioned that you guys do engagement surveys, et cetera, et cetera. So to some degree, you have some cultural measurements. And the second question is, what are your thoughts about succession and the low supply of technical skills with managing expectations and culture?
Okay, so I'll take the first question, which is how instrumental measuring organization culture is. I would say very, very instrumental. Like we've all spoken to this morning, culture forms a really strong basis for the success of organizational succession planning and many other people interventions that we have. So it is important that there is a measure. And you can't measure, first of all, what you haven't defined. So I think one of the things that we've tried to do is to identify what for us are the key people management elements that define our culture. Clearly articulate those, communicate them, and then on an annual basis, in fact, it's more than annual, we do like 6 monthly dipsticks, and then the annual survey is to check how we are progressing against these. Why is it important? For 2 reasons. One, with every dipstick or survey that we do, we are able to see what the impact is of the things that we are putting in place. 2, it starts to hold managers accountable, because human beings by nature, I think, are competitive. So they start to wonder, why is it working on your Kabi's team, but it's not working on my team? What is she doing differently? So we're starting to see a lot of cross-learning, a lot of conversations about, we are one organization, but certain things seem to be working so much better in certain pockets of the organization. What is it? So back to some of the things that we've alluded to, you find that although there's an organization expectation, the mindset within certain leaders hasn't shifted to what is going to actually positively impact the culture and hence, where we're trying to go. So I think in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is it's very important to measure. And when you measure, you're able to take actionable steps. The second question, I think, is on succession planning and how to manage it in low supply of technical skills. So that's one that really resonates with the industry that I'm in. So I'm in a steel industry. Very few steel industry or professionally led and managed steel organizations in this part of Africa or of the world. So when I came in a couple of years ago, just looking at the legacy of the organization, we realized that we had a huge reliance on expert talent for core technical skills. Why? Because you will get a lot of steel mills in Asia, in the Far East, in Australia, in the Americas, but very few in Africa. So every time there was a technical role, then we would bring in an expert. But we started to change the narrative and ask ourselves, is this sustainable based on where we want to go as an organization? And if we're in a part of the world where we know that employment levels are low, however, there's a huge talent pool, what is our responsibility as an employer to develop these skills? So we've started to build the skills internally. When we bring in these skills from overseas, one of their key mandates is to develop a local successor. And we've gone beyond develop one person, but actually created local technical talent academies. So we'll get bright young students from university and we'll take them through a very robust technical training program so that we assure ourselves of a pipeline for when these positions come up. Now that has created really good both attraction and retention platforms within the organization. Because we now have graduates knocking at our doors and saying, hey, I want to grow my career with you. Because from what I've had from those who've come in the last 2-3 years, you guys are truly committed to creating and developing this talent. So that's, in my view, I think low skills or low technical skill talent pool could be the reality, but it is the responsibility of people in those technical areas to create programs to develop those skills, not just for their own organization, but for the broader, industrial talent pool. As Nyokabi said, people will come and people will go because motivations and interests at different points in time vary. But once you have created a core program and you can do it for your organization, you will also start to feed the wider talent pool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was very, very informative, and I think the focused effort you are putting in ensuring that the technical skills are developed in country, I think will go a long way because it'll be a multiplier effect over time, whether that talent remains within SAFA or goes towards expanding the sector on the continent. So that's really great. The last question, before we wrap up, because I also think it's very important because it's our reality. What happens, and how do we deal with leaders that fail to own the process? That question is coming from Khomotso. So how do we curb or deal with people that just like, nope, I don't want to let go?
Well, let's put it this way. Everybody in an organization, unless you are the owner and founder of that organization, and if you're a founder, you want it to live in perpetuity. Therefore, it's in your interest, if you want to leave a legacy, to let go, right? So it's mindset, the thing that was said earlier. But the rest of us are employees, right? So no employee is above what can I say, is above the law, as it were. So if the leaders of that organization are not foresighted to say, this thing, we want to ensure that it lives on, and you actually demand, part of what boards do is to demand a human resources plan to indicate for itself, even as a board, as well as for the organization. So when is turnover going to, sometimes you have to force turnover, right? You have to shift things around, particularly in a post-COVID world where the skills that people may have had are no longer relevant. So you want to make sure that you rejig the skills. So I think organizations that find themselves being held hostage by one person are not serious. Those organizations are not serious. That's all I can say.
They're not serious about their lives. Oh, I love that. And so with that, our time has come to an end. I would like to just say thank you to such an engaged panel that has been willing to share, from Susanna, Jacqueline, Nyokabi to Dr. Jerry. Thank you very much for being here, for being fully present, and for imparting all this knowledge. I would love to also thank our audience who have been very active and very engaged in the chat. I see people are sharing things, teaching each other things, talking about the EDCOM model, etc., etc. So I think with that, I would like to say thank you for giving me your attention. Thank you for giving me your time, and may you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.